Imagine a single moment that could shatter your pretty or forge it into something unbreakable. Meet Maya Johnson, a black female sergeant whose routine stop at an Atlanta gas station became a battle against prejudice, sparking a movement for justice. From the sting of handcuffs to a city's roar for change, her story is a testament to courage, resilience, and the power of one voice to inspire millions. Will you stand with Maya? Watch to the end to discover how her defiance changed lives and could change yours. Like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more stories that ignite your heart and fuel your fight for what's right. It was a crisp April morning in Atlanta, Georgia, and Maya Johnson was about to walk into a moment that would change her life forever. At 28, she was a vision of strength and grace, her ebony skin glowing under the soft dawn light, her eyes bright with the quiet confidence of a woman who knew her worth. A sergeant in the Army Reserve, Maya was preparing for a weekend of training at Fort Stewart, a routine she'd followed for nearly a decade. Her camouflage uniform was pressed to perfection, her combat boots polished to a mirror shine, and her name tag gleamed proudly on her chest. As she stepped out of her modest apartment, the cool air brushed her face, carrying the promise of a new day. To Maya, this was more than just another morning. It was a testament to her discipline, her pride, and her unbreakable bond with the military that had shaped her. She climbed into her 2015 Jeep Cherokee, the engine humming softly as she navigated the familiar streets of Atlanta. The gas gauge hovered near empty, so she pulled into a Shell station on Peachtree Road, a bustling spot nestled among coffee shops and early morning commuters. The station was quiet, save for the faint hum of pumps and the occasional chime of a car door. Maya slid her card into the pump, selected regular unleaded, and leaned against her Jeep, unwrapping a protein bar. She took a bite, savoring the moment of calm before the long drive to Fort Stewart. Her phone buzzed a text from her mom, asking if she'd eaten breakfast. Maya smiled, typing a quick reply. "All good, Ma. See you Sunday." This was her rhythm. Duty, family, and the steady pulse of a life built on resilience. She glanced at her duffel bag in the back seat, packed meticulously the night before with her field gear. Every item was in its place, a reflection of the order she brought to both her military and personal life. As the pump clicked, signaling a full tank, Maya felt a quiet surge of pride. Wearing her uniform wasn't just about serving, it was about carrying the weight of her ancestors' struggles, her community's hopes, and her own dreams. She was young, beautiful, and unbreakable, a black woman who had carved her place in a world that didn't always make room for her. But as she reached for the nozzle, a white SUV pulled into the station, its presence subtle yet ominous. Maya didn't notice it at first, her mind on the road ahead. She couldn't know that this ordinary stop would soon spiral into a confrontation that would test her strength and spark a movement. The morning was still young, but the air was already thick with the weight of what was to come. But just as Maya Johnson thought the morning would unfold like any other, a shadow of trouble rolled into the Shell station. The white SUV she hadn't noticed earlier sat ominously 2 pumps away, its tinted windows hiding the eyes that were already fixed on her. Maya, still leaning against her Jeep, was tucking her phone into her pocket when a sharp voice cut through the morning air. "Hey you, step away from the vehicle." Her heart skipped a beat, but she turned calm, her training kicking in. Standing before her were 2 Atlanta police officers, one young, wiry, with a buzz cut and a scowl that screamed suspicion. The other older, heavier, his mirrored sunglasses reflecting the world in cold detachment. Maya's brow furrowed slightly, but her voice stayed steady. "Good morning, officers. Is there a problem?" The younger officer, his badge glinting with the name Daniels, stepped forward, his hand resting on his belt. "We got a call about someone acting suspicious. You got ID?" Maya's lips curved into a polite smile, though a flicker of unease stirred in her chest. She reached slowly into her uniform pocket, pulling out her military ID and driver's license. "I'm Sergeant Maya Johnson, Army Reserve, heading to Fort Stewart for training," she said, holding the IDs out with both hands. Her voice was clear, professional, every word laced with the pride of a decade in service. Daniels barely glanced at the cards, his eyes narrowing as he tilted his head. "This doesn't prove anything," Anyone can print a fake ID these days. Maya's breath caught, a spark of indignation flaring in her gut. She straightened, her gaze locking onto Daniel's. Fake? Officer, I've served for 10 years. This is my uniform, my ID, my life. Her words were calm, but carried an edge, like a blade sheathed but ready. The older officer, Carter, stood silent, his arms crossed, offering no support or contradiction. Daniels smirked, undeterred. We'll see about that. Turn around. Hands behind your back. Maya blinked, her mind racing. You're detaining me? For what? Daniel's voice hardened, his patience thinning. I said turn around now. The air grew thick, the hum of the gas pumps fading as a small crowd began to form. A delivery driver paused, his phone already out, recording. A woman in scrubs muttered, "She's in uniform. What's going on?" Maya's heart pounded, but she kept her composure, her training anchoring her. She looked at Carter, hoping for reason. But his nod was curt, a silent command to obey. The weight of their suspicion pressed down on her, heavy and unjust. She was a black woman in a uniform that should have commanded respect. Yet here she stood, reduced to a suspect in seconds. Officers, this is a mistake, Maya said, her voice low but firm. I've done nothing wrong. Daniels ignored her, stepping closer, his handcuffs glinting in the morning light. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, a chorus of disbelief and anger. Maya's pulse quickened, not from fear, but from the searing realization that this wasn't about a call-it, was about who they saw when they looked at her. She took a slow breath, her mind already shifting to the next move, the call she'd make, the stand she'd take. But for now, the cuffs loomed, and the morning's promise was about to shatter. No one could have predicted that a routine stop for gas would spiral into a moment of raw injustice. But for Maya Johnson, the morning's promise shattered with the cold snap of handcuffs. The Atlanta Shell Station, once a backdrop of mundane errands, now buzzed with tension as Officer Daniels' command, "Turn around now!" hung in the air like a guillotine. Maya's heart thudded, her mind a whirlwind of disbelief and resolve. She stood tall, her Army Reserve uniform a symbol of her decade-long service, yet it offered no shield against the suspicion in Daniel's eyes. She glanced at Officer Carter, searching for a flicker of reason, but his curt nod was a silent endorsement of her humiliation. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, a mix of shock and outrage, but Maya's focus narrowed to the injustice unfolding before her. "You're making a mistake," she said, her voice steady but laced with steel. "I've shown my ID. I'm a sergeant, not a criminal." Daniels ignored her, his handcuffs gleaming as he stepped closer. The crowd edged forward, phones raised, capturing every second. A man in a delivery uniform shouted, "She's military, you see her uniform." The woman in scrubs from earlier yelled, "This is wrong." But their voices were drowned out by the sharp click of metal as Daniels snapped the cuffs around Maya's wrists, the steel biting into her skin. She winced, not from pain, but from the searing weight of being reduced to a suspect in the uniform she wore with pride. Her name tag tilted, her pressed camouflage creased, but Maya refused to bow her head. Carter opened the back door of the SUV, and Daniels pushed her toward it. "Get in," he barked. Maya complied, her movements deliberate, her eyes never leaving his. As she slid into the vinyl seat, the stale smell of sweat and old coffee filled her lungs. The door slammed shut, a final punctuation to her dignity's betrayal. Through the window, she saw Daniel strutting back to her Jeep, inspecting it as if it held secrets. Carter stood nearby, arms crossed, scanning the growing crowd with detached boredom. The onlookers' phones were still rolling, their voices a rising tide of dissent. "She told you she's a soldier," some cried. Maya's wrists ached under the tight cuffs, but her mind was razor sharp. This wasn't just about Harriet, it was about every black woman who'd ever been doubted, every soldier whose service was questioned. She leaned forward, her voice cutting through the plexiglass barrier. "I need to call my commanding officer." "Now." Daniels spun around, smirking. "You'll get your call at the station." Maya's jaw tightened. "This uniform gives me the right to contact my base immediately. You know that." For a moment, silence hung heavy. the weight of her words sinking in. Carter shifted, his sunglasses hiding his thoughts, but he didn't speak. The crowd's anger swelled, a woman's voice piercing the chaos. "You're on video, let her go." Maya's pulse raced, not from fear, but from a fire kindling within her. She wasn't just a sergeant, she was a force, and she wouldn't let this moment define her. Her mind flashed to Colonel Marcus Wright, her commander, and the call she'd make to turn this injustice on its head. The cuffs might bind her hands, but they couldn't silence her voice, and that voice was about to roar. Just when it seemed the scales of justice were tipped against Maya Johnson, a single phone call began to shift the tide. Locked in the back of the Atlanta police SUV, her wrists chafed by tight handcuffs, Maya's voice had pierced the plexiglass barrier with unyielding resolve. "I need to call my commanding officer." The words hung in the air, a quiet rebellion against the indignity she'd endured. Officer Daniel's smirk faltered for a split second, but he dismissed her, turning away. Yet Maya, her heart pounding with a mix of fury and hope, knew this was her moment. The Shell station buzzed with the crowd's growing unrest, phones recording, voices shouting, but inside the stifling vehicle, Maya's focus was singular. Colonel Marcus Wright, her commander, was her lifeline. With a reluctant grunt, Officer Carter slid her phone through the narrow slot in the plexiglass. Maya's cuffed hands fumbled, her fingers brushing the screen awkwardly, but she managed to dial. The line rang once, twice. "Right," a crisp voice answered, sharp with authority. "Colonel, it's Sergeant Maya Johnson," she said, her tone steady despite the chaos. "I'm handcuffed in a police SUV in Atlanta. They claim I'm impersonating a soldier, even after I showed my ID. They won't listen." A beat of silence followed, then Wright's voice hardened. "Stay calm, Sergeant. Keep the line open. I'm handling this." The call didn't end, it was a tether to justice, and Maya clung to it. Outside, the crowd's anger swelled. A woman in scrubs yelled, "She's a soldier. You're being filmed." A teenager posted a shaky video to Twitter, the caption blazing, "Cops cuff black woman in military uniform. This is wrong." Within minutes, the clip racked up thousands of views, retweets flooding in from Atlanta and beyond. The hashtag number Justice for Maya sparked, a digital wildfire. Daniels paced nervously, his radio crackling with updates from dispatch. "We're getting heat out here," he muttered to Carter, who remained stone-faced, his sunglasses masking any doubt. The air was electric, the crowd's chants a drumbeat of defiance. "Let her go! Let her go!" Maya sat upright, the cuffs digging into her skin, but her spirit unbroken. She could feel the shift, the momentum building beyond the SUV's tinted windows. Wright's voice crackled through the phone, now on speaker. "I've got the precinct on the line, Maya. They're pulling traffic cams. I'm 10 minutes out." Her chest tightened with a flicker of relief, but she knew this wasn't over. The crowd's phones kept rolling, capturing Daniel's smug stride and Carter's cold indifference. A man in a delivery uniform shouted, "This is going viral." And he wasn't wrong, the video had hit local news feeds, a reporter already en route. Maya's eyes burned with determination. This wasn't just her fight, it was for every soldier, every black woman, every person judged before they could speak. She whispered to herself, "They messed with the wrong sergeant." The SUV's door loomed shut, but the world outside was waking up, and Maya's call had lit the fuse. If this story of courage and defiance moves you, hit that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more stories that ignite change. Your voice matters. Join us to keep the fight for justice alive. Right as the digital wildfire of number Justice for Maya blazed across Atlanta's airwaves, a new force rolled into the Shell station, signaling the dawn of reckoning. The roar of an approaching SUV cut through the crowd's chants, and a tall, broad-shouldered man in a crisp police uniform stepped out. Lieutenant James Carterno, relation to the officer who'd cuffed Maya, strode toward the scene with the weight of authority. His dark skin and steady gaze mirrored the resolve Maya had clung to inside the police SUV. The crowd parted, their phones still recording, as he tapped on the vehicle's window. "Sergeant Johnson?" he called, his voice calm but commanding. Maya, her wrists still bound, looked up, a flicker of hope igniting in her chest. "Yes, sir," she replied, her tone unwavering despite the ache in her arms. Carter opened the door, his eyes locking onto hers with a mix of professionalism and regret. "I've spoken with Colonel Wright and reviewed the traffic cam footage," he said, carefully removing her handcuffs. The metal fell away, leaving red marks on her skin, but Maya stood tall, her Army Reserve uniform reclaiming its dignity. "On behalf of the Atlanta Police Department, I apologize for this injustice." The words landed heavily, met with a cheer from the crowd, but Maya's expression remained steely. She rubbed her wrists, her gaze shifting to Officers Daniels and Carter, who stood nearby, their confidence visibly crumbling. "You're not sorry for what you did," she said, her voice low and cutting. "You're sorry you got caught." The crowd erupted, their shouts of "That's right" and "Shame on you" echoing across the station. The viral video, now nearing 100,000 views, had drawn a local news van, its reporter scrambling to capture the moment. Daniels shifted uncomfortably, his radio silent, while Carter avoided eye contact, his sunglasses no longer a shield. Lieutenant Carter raised a hand, quieting the crowd. "This incident is under investigation," he announced. "We're committed to transparency." But Maya knew words alone wouldn't undo the sting of being doubted, of being reduced to a suspect in the uniform she'd earned through years of sacrifice. Inside the SUV, Colonel Wright's voice crackled through her phone, still on the line. "You okay, Sergeant?" he asked, his tone a blend of concern and fury. "I'm fine, sir," Maya said, though her jaw tightened with lingering anger. "Just ready to move forward." Wright's reply was firm. "We're not letting this slide. I'm at the precinct now, pulling every string." Maya nodded, even though he couldn't see her. She stepped out of the SUV, the morning sun warming her face, and caught sight of her Jeep, untouched but now a symbol of the battle she just fought. The crowd's cheers softened, some offering nods of respect, others still filming, their videos fueling a movement that was only beginning. Maya's heart swelled with a complex mix of relief and resolve. The apology was a start, but it didn't erase the humiliation or the deeper truth. This wasn't just about her. It was about every Black soldier, every woman of color, whose service was questioned because of who they were. As Lieutenant Carter escorted her to her Jeep, Maya's mind raced. She wasn't free yet, not until those who'd wronged her faced real consequences. The crowd's energy, the viral video, and Wright's relentless advocacy were her arsenal, and she knew this fight was far from over. As the sun climbed higher over Atlanta, the Shell station transformed from a battleground of injustice into a beacon of accountability. The apology from Lieutenant Carter had cracked the dam, but it was the unrelenting pressure from the viral number Justice for Maya video now, surpassing 200,000 views that unleashed a flood of consequences for Officers Daniels and Carter. By noon, the Atlanta Police Department announced that both officers were suspended without pay, pending a full investigation. The news spread like wildfire, amplified by local television stations and social media, where comments poured in, "They disrespected a Black soldier in uniform, and fire them now." Maya Johnson, standing beside her Jeep, felt the crowd's cheers wash over her, but her heart carried a heavier truth. An apology wasn't enough. Real change demanded more. Inside the precinct, Colonel Marcus Wright was a force of nature. He'd arrived with a dossier of evidence, traffic cam footage, witness statements, and the damning viral video demanding accountability. By evening, the investigation confirmed what the crowd already knew. Daniels and Carter had violated protocol, ignoring Maya's valid military ID and acting on baseless suspicion. The department's internal review board moved swiftly, and within days, both officers were terminated. The announcement came via a press release, but it was the mayor's emergency press conference that sealed the moment. Standing beside the police chief, he declared, "Atlanta will not tolerate discrimination. We're implementing mandatory training on bias and new protocols for handling military personnel." A liaison position between the department and Fort Stewart was created, a direct response to Maya's ordeal. The city buzzed with the fallout. Small protests sprang up outside City Hall, with signs reading, "Honor our soldiers" and "Justice for Maya." The hashtag trended nationwide, drawing support from veterans groups and civil rights advocates. Maya, however, felt the weight of becoming a symbol. She hadn't asked for the spotlight, yet her story resonated deeply, especially with Black women and soldiers who saw their own struggles in her defiance. At Fort Stewart, her fellow reservists whispered her name with pride, one saying, She stood tall when they tried to break her. Another, a black female corporal, added, "This is why we fight to be seen, to be respected." Maya's phone buzzed relentlessly with messages of support, but also hate from those who called her confrontational or worse. She ignored the noise, focusing on the quiet moments that grounded her, like polishing her boots or folding her uniform with care. Yet the city's response wasn't just noise. New training modules rolled out, requiring officers to verify military IDs before taking action. Community forums with Fort Stewart representatives began, fostering dialogue to prevent future injustices. These were small steps, but they were steps, and Maya felt their ripple effect. Her resolve deepened as she stood by her Jeep, the same one Daniels had circled like a predator. The crowd had dispersed, but their energy lingered, a reminder of the power of collective outrage. Maya knew this wasn't just her victory, it was a spark for others, a call to demand respect. The fight had left scars, but it had also lit a fire, one that would burn brighter in the days to come. Even as Atlanta's streets pulsed with the aftershocks of her victory, Maya Johnson sought refuge in the quiet corners of her life, where the weight of being a symbol could fade, if only for a moment. The protests, the trending hashtag, and the new police protocols had turned her ordeal at the Shell station into a beacon of change, but Maya hadn't sought the spotlight. She craved the familiar rhythm of her routine polishing her boots until they gleamed, folding her Army Reserve uniform with precision, running along Decatur's trails at dawn. Yet, as she sat on her couch one evening, the city's roar muted by her apartment's walls, a single letter slipped through the noise, anchoring her to a truth she hadn't fully grasped. Her stand had ignited a spark far beyond herself. The letter came from Aisha Brooks, a 19-year-old black female recruit stationed at Fort Stewart. In neat, heartfelt handwriting, Aisha poured out her fears. "I joined the Army dreaming of serving, but I worried I'd never belong," she wrote. "Seeing you stand tall, even in cuffs, showed me I can be proud, no matter who doubts me. You're my hero, Sergeant Johnson." Maya's breath caught, her fingers tracing the words. She read the letter again, then a third time, each sentence sinking deeper. Aisha's words weren't just gratitude, they were a mirror, reflecting the doubts Maya had once faced as a young recruit, the whispers of, "you don't belong," she'd silenced with every promotion, every mission. Tears pricked her eyes, not from sorrow, but from a quiet pride that bloomed in her chest. Maya set the letter down, her gaze drifting to her uniform, hung neatly in her closet. She'd refused every television interview, every reporter's call, choosing instead to speak at a veterans center in Decatur. There, in a small room filled with reservists and retirees, she shared her story not as a headline, but as a soldier. "I didn't fight for fame," she told them, her voice steady. "I fought for respect for me, for you, for every one of us who wears this uniform." The room nodded, some eyes glistening, others clapping softly. A black female veteran, her hair streaked with gray, gripped Maya's hand afterward. "You spoke for us all," she said. Maya smiled, but inside, she felt the weight of that truth settle deeper. Her phone still buzzed with messages, some calling her a trailblazer, others spewing venom, but Maya let them fade. Aisha's letter was her anchor, a reminder that her stand had reached one heart, one dream, one future soldier. She wasn't a symbol to manipulate or a story to exploit. She was Maya Johnson, sergeant, daughter, black woman, and now a quiet force for those who needed her most. As she folded Aisha's letter and tucked it into her nightstand, Maya felt a new resolve. The fight hadn't ended, it had evolved, and she was ready to carry it forward, one step, one heart at a time. With Aisha's letter tucked safely in her nightstand, Maya Johnson carried a new clarity, a flame kindled by the realization that her stand at the Shell station had touched lives she'd never meet. The protests had quieted, the hashtag number Justice for Maya no longer trended, but the changes, new police protocols, a liaison with Fort Stewart, and a city reckoning with its bias stood as monuments to her courage. Yet, as Maya laced up her running shoes for her morning jog through Decatur's tree-lined trails, she knew the true legacy of her fight wasn't in headlines or policies. It was in the hearts of those like Aisha, the young black women who saw her defiance and found their own strength. This was the lesson she'd carry forward, the one she hoped the world would hear. Maya's journey began with a routine stop, a moment that could have been forgotten. Instead, it became a crucible, testing her resolve against the weight of prejudice. When officers Daniels and Carter dismissed her military ID, they didn't just cuff her wrists, they challenged her identity, her service, her place in a world that often questioned black women. But Maya didn't break. She stood tall, her voice steady, her call to Colonel Wright a lifeline that turned the tide. The crowd's phones, the viral video, the protests, they weren't just noise. They were a chorus, amplifying her truth until Atlanta and the nation had to listen. Every step, from the click of handcuffs to the mayor's press conference, was a testament to the power of standing firm, of refusing to be silenced. Now, as she ran, the rhythm of her steps matched the beat of her thoughts. Maya wasn't naive. She knew one incident, one set of reforms, wouldn't erase systemic bias. The hate messages still lingered in her inbox, reminders of the work left undone. But Aisha's letter and the nods of respect from her fellow reservists proved something else. Change starts small, with one voice, one moment of courage. Maya's stand had shown Aisha she belonged in the Army, had shown veterans they were seen, had shown Atlanta that accountability was possible. That was enough to keep her moving forward, to keep her serving, to keep her speaking when others needed her. Her run ended at her apartment, the morning sun casting long shadows. Maya paused, catching her breath, her Army uniform waiting in her closet for the next drill. She was still Sergeant Johnson, still the daughter who texted her mom, still the woman who ran these trails. But she was also Moria, spark for change, a quiet force who'd proven that justice begins when you refuse to bow. The world might forget the Shell Station, but Maya wouldn't. It had taught her, and now her story could teach others. Stand tall, speak truth, and never let anyone dim your light. For Aisha, for herself, for every soldier doubted, Maya's fight was a promise that courage could reshape the future, one heart at a time. As the sun set over Atlanta, Maya Johnson stood at the edge of her journey, her Army uniform neatly folded, Aisha's letter a quiet treasure in her nightstand. The Shell Station was no longer just a place to refuel, it was a crucible where her courage had been tested, where prejudice had tried to dim her light, and where she'd proven that one voice could spark a revolution. From the sting of handcuffs to the roar of a city demanding justice, Maya's story wasn't just about her. It was about every black woman who'd been doubted, every soldier whose service was questioned, every heart that yearned to be seen. She didn't seek fame or headliness, she sought respect. And in doing so, she carved a path for others to walk with pride. Through Maya's eyes, the resolution was clear. Justice isn't a single apology or a policy change. It's a promise kept every day in the way we stand tall, speak truth, and refuse to let bias define us. The officers who wronged her faced consequences, but the real victory was in Aisha's letter, in the reservists who nodded with pride, in the protocols that now protect others. Maya learned that her strength wasn't just in endurance, it was in inspiring. Her story taught her, and now it teaches us. That change begins with one moment of defiance, one call for help, one heart that refuses to break. The lesson is simple yet profound. When you know your worth, no cuffs can bind your spirit, and no doubt can silence your voice. This is the value of Maya's fight, a reminder that courage is contagious, that standing up for what's right can ripple through a community, a city, a nation. It's a call to each of us to recognize the power in our own voices, to challenge injustice, and to lift up those who've been overlooked. Maya's story is a beacon, illuminating the path toward a world where respect is universal, where service is honored, where every Aisha can dream without fear. Let her courage fuel yours, her resolve strengthen your own, and her truth remind you that even the smallest stand can change the future. If Maya's story has moved you, if it sparked a fire in your heart, show it some love, hit that like button to spread her message. Drop a comment below. What does standing tall mean to you? And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more stories of resilience, justice, and inspiration that will keep you hooked, inspired, and ready to make a difference. Join us, because together we can keep the spark of change burning bright.